everybody. Dr. Eric Plasker here, and welcome to Questioning the Status Quo. I'm here with a good friend of mine, great pediatric chiropractor, one of the most prominent pediatric chiropractors in the world, Dr. Glenn McGinnis. Welcome, Dr. McGinnis.
Thank you, Dr. Plasker.
I want to talk today about common childhood conditions and question the status quo on what parents should maybe experience or look for in other ways to address these types of conditions. Some of them being things like ear infections, colic, flat head syndrome, as you've mentioned. Talk to us about, from a pediatric chiropractic perspective, about the approach that parents could look for in questioning the status quo.
Sure. Well, for example, ear infections. You know, that's a condition, it's the most medicated condition for kids in the United States, as it is in Australia. Kids are on antibiotics. A parent has a child with an ear infection, the standard procedure is to take that child to the doctor to get antibiotics. And the research says that, the latest research says that may not be the best approach. One of the reasons parents will take their child down that antibiotic pathway is because of their perception that there aren't any other options they've got available to them. But there are other options, and certainly chiropractic is one of those options.
Absolutely, and I think what's important here, especially when we talk about questioning the status quo, why this is an important conversation. We now hear a lot about probiotics. We went from antibiotics to probiotics because we're creating so many superbugs and we're destroying the intestinal tracts of kids and even adults also, but kids in this case in particular, because of the overuse of antibiotics. So that affects a child not just in that moment, but can affect whether or not they're going to live their ideal 100-year lifestyle, healthy and active over a long life, or they go down a sicker pathway. So talk to us about maybe some of the damaging effects of the antibiotics, as well as maybe what a chiropractor, a pediatrically trained chiropractor, would do.
So one of the side effects, and they say side effects, but it's not really a side effect, it's an effect.
Yeah,
so
in fact, just as on 100yearlifestyle.com, there's a newsletter called Side Effects or Direct Effects.
Yes.
Check it out.
So it's a direct effect of antibiotics on a child's gut, and that is it will create this what they call gut dysbiosis, which is where you get an imbalance of good bacteria and bad bacteria. And there is so much research coming out nowadays that directly affects the child's immune system, which is why we see so often children will be on antibiotics, the ear infection will resolve, whether it'll resolve with or without the antibiotics we don't know, but then 3 weeks later they've got another ear infection, and then 3 weeks later they've got another ear infection because they're on these antibiotics, I believe, and it's affecting the ability of that child to express its innate healing potential.
Absolutely, and as a parent, I think it's important that you question the status quo, because if you understand that this baby that started from 2 tiny cells that came together to grow into 80 quadrillion cells within 9 months and be born, and this baby, that innate intelligence potential within that person also has within them the ability to heal, as long as there's no interference to the function of the nervous system and the body and other dietary things that maybe you can do. So talk to us from a chiropractic perspective. What would you recommend that a parent wanting to question the status quo, what might they do?
Number one, without any doubt, is chiropractic care. You know, the research says an adjustment, specifically in the upper cervical region, has the ability to drain the eustachian tube, and it has an direct effect on the drainage of the eustachian tube, and that is what drains the middle ear into the sinus. So, you know, the full ear, the blocked ear, when a child gets a sore eardrum because it's bulging, if you can adjust that upper cervical spine and help to drain that, drain the middle ear, you're a long way towards getting through that ear infection without antibiotics. And that's always my goal with children that I see, is to get that child through the health crisis without having to resort to antibiotics. So certainly the chiropractic adjustment
and let me stop you there, let me just clarify for the viewer here. The chiropractic care and the examination is not a treatment for the ear infection, which is a very important distinction here, because the ear infection is the effect in most cases, as you and I see. The cause very often is the subluxation, the misalignment, the pressure on the nerve that may be in the upper cervical spine or somewhere else in the neck.
Absolutely.
Very important distinction.
Absolutely. So chiropractic care is certainly one option, a really important option, but you've got a whole bunch of other things. You've got dietary, you've got to look at the diet of the child. Is the child having too much dairy? That can create issues. There are vitamins that may help the child. There are certainly probiotics is a big part. But when the child has an infection, there are also other options that you can take as a parent that may help that child get through that infection without resorting to antibiotics. And that can be as simple as at night time propping the child up so that the ear drains easier. It can be even a hot compress, garlic homeopathic drops to actually help the child from a pain perspective. All of these things can get that child through that infection without you, the parent, needing to resort to antibiotics, which is so important.
It is so important. And going back to the beginning of this conversation, as far as it relates to the chiropractic checkup, if the nerve is not functioning properly, many of those other things that you just mentioned, obviously, it's like a treadmill. They just keep coming back. So if you have been on that roller coaster ride, you got to make sure that nerve is checked in the upper neck, and that's where the chiropractic care comes in.
Number one step should be, I believe, any child who has a ear infection should get their child checked by a chiropractor.
So there's some great information for you. Parents, question the status quo as it relates to your children and common childhood conditions.